Welcome back, everyone. Apologies for some of the technical issues. We've got Ryan back. Ryan, we missed you. We're so happy you're okay.
This whole virtual draft experience has been something, right? We get all the way to the end, the finish line, no blips, and whoops, the power cord.
It's an important part. We all knew that
Just
this could be a
Just
possibility.
a little bit.
We all knew. I was thinking a la General Manager Brian Gutekunst's press conference over the phone not so long ago. We could put some hold music on as we waited for you to return. I figured we might as well just wait it out, restart, come back, and here we are now.
Olivia, I'm going to have nightmares for a long time about conference calls after this week. And I think that we can both agree if there's something that's worse than doing a live stream and having the power go out, it's not being able to mute a phone.
It's challenging. You'd be surprised how challenging it is. If you
Very
don't know, if you're not in on the inside joke, for whatever reason, there was hold music playing during Brian Gutekunst's final press conference over the phone today. It was entertaining. He did a very good job at handling it. I don't know how we all handled it. Probably not as maturely, right?
No, look at Omar. No, I was not playing the elevator music today. I'm the one that forgot to charge his computer.
That's okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for your patience. We're back up and running. Let's resume what we were just speaking about, which was, I'll bring this back up, the 2020 draft picks. Who has the potential to make an immediate impact on the Packers this upcoming season?
Yeah, A.J. Dillon, like I said. Josiah DeGuara was a really interesting pick when he was made because nobody had him in the third round. Now, I think part of that's the idea that, one, the Packers loved him, but two, they didn't have a fourth-round pick. So they didn't pick him. We waited 3.5 hours today for them to be on the clock. So that's a long time. Like, if they were going to draft a guy they love, they had to take him a little early. But there's not a coincidence that they did take him early. They're willing to take him early. They see him as their Kyle Juszczyk, and a versatile guy. Matt LaFleur was really gushing about him today, saying that he's a guy that in the same personnel grouping, you can line him up in so many different spots, fullback, H-back, in line, you can split them. There's so many things you can do, which with being the same personnel grouping, it's really difficult for the defense to know what's coming, and it really stresses the defense. The way Matt LaFleur was talking about him, he's going to play. They lost their fullback in Danny Vitale this spring in free agency to the New England Patriots. Josiah DeGuara, he's going to play, and the head coach is awfully excited about him. Then, like I said, it'll be really interesting with the sixth-round offensive linemen and just how they differentiate themselves.
DeGuara has been touted by both Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur as being someone who is very versatile, has played a number of different positions, could potentially be a very good pick and an interesting replacement for fullback Danny Vitale. Finally, you look again at this list here, a lot of offensive picks there for Matt LaFleur to work with. How is Matt LaFleur's vision for the offense of the future reflected in this year's draft?
Matt LaFleur said, it's not that he was looking for specific players for a scheme. It's his job to find, and Brian Gutekunst's job to find good players, and his job to mold his coaching, his scheme to those good players. But I don't think there's a lot of coincidence there. I mean, you get past the first-round pick, what do they have? They got a power runner. They've got a guy that they feel like is a Kyle Juszczyk type, H-back, tight end, fullback. They've got a lot of offensive linemen there. They've got the makings of a pretty seismic transition to a run game and an offense where everything plays off the run. Now, what was seen in the last Packers game that they played, but a team that ran literally all over them in the NFC Championship game. One of the things I find interesting about that is that, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Well, the 49ers have kind of digressed over the past week, their run game. They trade Matt Breida. They actually draft a receiver in the first round, which emphasizes the passing game. Packers don't draft a receiver at all. The 49ers go from 3 running backs to 2. The Packers go from 2 to 3 in terms of guys that they feel comfortable carrying the football. So a little different. The one thing that they cannot replicate in any way, shape, or form is that the 49ers have the tight end, the best tight end in the league in George Kittle. The Packers don't. But imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, similar to very almost identical schemes. And you're looking at a Packers offense that on a foundational level is really transitioning to a very significant part of their offense being the run.
Speaking of transitions, let's talk about, without a doubt, the most important transition, the biggest topic out of this year's draft, in the Packers drafting Aaron Love's heir apparent in Utah State quarterback Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers, we've learned, has spoken to Jordan Love, according to a report from ESPN. That's a big update. We don't know exactly what they discussed. However, why is their relationship between the two of them and their ability to exist peacefully, to coexist peacefully, important for the Packers?
Well, because it's a distraction if it's not, and not just a meaningless distraction that can be easily swept under the rug, but something that will have to be dealt with. And that's something that nobody wants. Nobody in this organization, too, wants to repeat the pains of 2008. This franchise, better than any other, knows how difficult, how delicate the transition from a legendary quarterback can be. And if that is, in fact, what happens, they're not going to want to go through what they've already been through. So that relationship's awfully important. Matt LaFleur said something big tonight that got my attention. I'm sure anyone, unlike myself, who was here in 2005 when Aaron Rodgers was drafted, got their attention. He said that he believes Aaron Rodgers, not just the leader of the football team, that's an obvious statement, but will be a great mentor to Jordan Love. If you remember, Brett Favre had no interest in being a mentor to Aaron Rodgers. He didn't want to help Aaron Rodgers take his job. His job, in Brett Favre's words, was to win football games, nothing more. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Aaron Rodgers now in that role views his job. Is his job to win football games and nothing more? Or is it to be a great mentor, like Matt LaFleur said? I think that's going to be really interesting to watch play out.
How will that relationship, that mentorship, whether it happens or not, be reflected in what we see?
It's going to be tough maybe at times to see how that's reflected. We'll see what is said in public. You're not always privy to things that are said in private. I don't know that it's something that you're going to see translate to the field all that much. I think Aaron Rodgers, he is a pro's pro. He's a legacy quarterback. He's got other things to worry about other than is he always a mentor to Jordan Love. It's not the primary job at the end of the day. So it will be tough. One thing that's important to mention, Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur did not talk to Aaron Rodgers about drafting a quarterback before making the pick, which is unlike the Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman said that he did speak with Carson Wentz before drafting Jalen Hurts in the second round a day later. There was none of that in Green Bay, but both of them did speak with Aaron Rodgers immediately after. Both really carried the same message out of that, which is that they don't believe that Aaron Rodgers' response to Jordan Love's arrival, his heir apparent's arrival, is going to be something that's a problem. He doesn't expect the problem from Aaron Rodgers. So that's that's where they are in their belief system right now. We just got to see if that happens, and it'll be very fascinating to watch unfold.
This season, the next several seasons, as Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love coexist on the roster together, are going to be incredibly interesting. I think we're both looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Finally, Ryan, I just really quickly want to discuss the rapid fire undrafted free agent class. The most important thing to discuss when it comes to undrafted free agents this year, Ryan, are the challenges. What will some of the challenges be this season of having an undrafted free agent class in the era of the coronavirus?
Well, it's all virtual. There's no hands-on coaching. And the Packers, and this is something that has continued with Brian Gutekunst, that they are in many ways a safe haven for undrafted rookies that don't hear their name called. They are a place or a franchise where you can come to and you can get a fair shot. And it's going to be interesting to see how that changes when you don't get that hands-on coaching from May to August. It's an uphill climb, not just for Packers undrafted free agents, but undrafted free agents throughout the league. And even drafted rookies, it's going to be the same way, but especially for those guys that don't have the assets pumped into them of a draft pick. It's going to be an uphill climb for all that entire group across the league, and we'll see how that goes.
For what it's worth, I want to note that list that we just showed isn't necessarily an exhaustive list. That is the list that we're aware of at the moment. So it's around, correct, it's around 13 players at the moment. So let's move on to some of your questions now. I would love to take, oh, there we go, Jake. Jake, let's discuss Jake's questions. Should the Packers try and trade somewhere for a wide receiver, or should the Packers trust the pre-existing wide receiver core? Tonight, Brian Gutekunst talked about this question exactly. He seems like he has a lot of faith in the players that he has currently, including, and a lot of that sentiment comes from the fact that Allen Lazard has emerged this past season. There's some faith there in free agent signing Devin Funchess. He's looking forward to seeing what wide receiver Equanimeous St. Brown can bring after he missed all of last season when he injured himself in training camp. Plus, everybody else, of course, Devontae Adams is a big name in that wide receiving core. We don't tell the Packers what to do. We don't tell the fans how to feel. But how do you make sense of the Packers' current receiving core versus what's still out there on the open market?
Well, it's tough to get a feel for how they feel, because on one hand, Brian Gutekunst spoke of roster building as a 365-day-a-year job. On the other hand, and I think this is always important to keep in mind, you always talk about draft grades, and to me, it's impossible to grade a single player in the instant aftermath, because we just don't know. It takes 2 to 3 years to know about a player in this league. But it's always about thematic. Can you see a plan within the entire draft class, and did they kind of follow that? And you see that with this draft class. Now, you might disagree with the plan, but the plan, and Brian Gutekunst said that it wasn't maybe by design, but the way it turned out was that they are much better equipped to run the football now than they were a week ago. There's no question about that. Part of that, if you remember back to last year when the Packers didn't have the juice in their receiving core behind Devontae Adams, when it was a lot of inconsistency, lack of big plays, the one thing that they constantly praised this group of receivers, which is going to be largely the same as last year, was their run blocking. And what has this draft been about, and what does this offense look to be about going forward, is running the football. So I wonder if they feel like they have the receivers to fit the scheme and the approach to the offense that they want to do. Now, you can disagree with that again all you want, and I think our Tom Silverstein made a great point and had a great question for Brian Gutekunst tonight, which was the fact that not with this deep, maybe historically deep receiving draft class, the immediate aftermath might not be what is felt most, but 2 or 3 years down the line, not getting a receiver now, in the long term, how is that going to be felt? And I think that there's a very high chance that that's going to be felt in the long term, but they might just feel internally that they've got the receiving blockers to execute the offense that they want to run. And you can't deny that they just saw that type of approach work flawlessly in the NFC Championship game, and was a big reason why they didn't get to the Super Bowl last year.
Only time will tell. It was a very good question there by Tom, and thank you, Jake, very much for your question. Let's move on to Michael. Ryan, you mentioned in your response there, you talked a little bit about the Packers emphasizing the run game, adding a running back. We discussed A.J. Dillon, who potentially could make an immediate impact on this Packers offense. Michael wants to know, well, what's the other side of it? How will Aaron Rodgers deal with the idea of handing the ball off more?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting too. He didn't get the explosive receiving help that maybe, and he even hinted when he went on with Pat McAfee before the draft or during the first round that maybe he wanted to get in the skill area. He got something else. He got skill players, but he got something else other than that. So we'll see. Pete Doherty, our columnist, made a great point in his column today, which was 20 years ago. This is pretty much what the Denver Broncos did in the waning years of John Elway. Was they really went heavy with a run offense, and they won a couple Super Bowls doing that. So now obviously the game's changed in 20 years, but this is similar. And John Elway was a quarterback who, very much like Aaron Rodgers, early in his career, was used to airing it out. The offense, the team was on his right arm, and then it changed, and he bought into that, and it was a big part of their success, the willingness to buy into that approach. So, we'll have to see with Aaron Rodgers, but I would imagine that he's a student of the game, student of the history of the game, that he's aware of that.
Thank you, Michael, for your question. Let's move on to Joseph here. We discussed earlier in our show all three of the offensive linemen, all interior offensive linemen that the Packers picked up in the 6th round of the draft. Joseph wants to know, with center Corey Linsley being a free agent in 2021, how likely is it that his job is on the line, or is it threatened by any of these three offensive linemen, especially the center?
Yeah, it's going to be up to them, right? I mean, coming in on paper, you look and a Jake Hansen is a guy that he plays the same position. Corey Linsley was a 5th-round pick. Jake Hansen's a 6th-round pick. Not a lot of difference there. So if Jake Hansen comes in, develops, and is a guy that they feel within a year from now can be a starting caliber center in this league and play over 1,000 snaps a year at a high level, sure, absolutely that can happen. But he's got to do it, and if he doesn't, that presents a decision for this front office to make. So it's really up to the player.
Awesome. I saw a question. Sorry, I'm trying to find a question here that I saw earlier. It was essentially the boiled down question was how the Aaron Rodgers trade, or excuse me, the Aaron Rodgers his fall in the draft back in 2005, how that mirrors perhaps where Jordan Love was taken in the draft this year, how the situation with Rodgers and Favre then mirrors the situation with Rodgers and Love now. How much do you buy into the situations being similar, or do you just believe the similarities end with the fact that Rodgers and Favre were each the same age at this time in their careers?
That's the similarity for sure. And, Aaron Rodgers is 10 months older now than Brett Favre was when Aaron Rodgers was drafted. The difference is obviously that Brett Favre for a while had been talking about retirement, and it was not a secret to the front office, whereas Aaron Rodgers wants to play just like Tom Brady until he wants to take on Father Time is what he wants to do, and he's made it very clear that he would like to play to 40 and beyond. So that's a big difference. The reality is that Aaron Rodgers has had a lot more injury issues and attrition over his career than Brett Favre. So you can say you want to play this long, but can you? And that's the question. Now, obviously, Aaron Rodgers is the type of competitor where you tell him not that he can't do something, he's going to go out there and prove it. But the one thing that gets tough with that, no matter how competitive you are, is your body breaking down. And there, if that happens, it doesn't really matter what you want. So you have to wonder if the Packers thought of that at all, the injury history. Even if Aaron Rodgers hasn't hinted at retirement, it doesn't mean that you can play to 45 just because you want to play to 45.
Thank you, RJ, for prompting that discussion. I found your comment once. I already boiled it down, I suppose. So thank you. Everyone, that is going to be the end of it for us tonight. Thank you to everyone who joined us for all 3 days of the draft this year. Even if you joined just for one live stream, just for 5 seconds, whatever capacity that you did participate in these live streams with Ryan and I, we really do appreciate it. It means a lot to us. We will be back in the future. This isn't the end of us. There will be lots of Packers news coming out in the coming weeks, especially as the undrafted free agent list finalizes, as of course we find out a little bit more what this virtual off-season program is going to look like this spring for the Packers. I'm really curious to know more about that. We'll find out, and we'll be with you. Make sure you check out Packers News for all of your Packers news, post-draft coverage, lots of good stuff over on the website right now, and we will see you next time. Be safe, be healthy, and have a great rest of your night.